The melee class in Terraria can sometimes be a struggle in early hard mode due to a lack of solid weapon choices. This is due to the nature of the class focusing mainly on close range combat. Today, we're going to be looking at what I believe to be the best early hard mode weapon for melee players who want to make it past the mechanical bosses without too much pain. The weapon in question being the Shadowflame Knife. The Shadowflame Knife is great off the bat, as it essentially functions like a ranged weapon. Yep, that's usually how it goes for the melee class. It gives the player the ability to take out enemies quickly while keeping distance from their deadly contact damage. But before we look at its firing mechanics, let's see how you obtain it. The Shadowflame Knife has a 1 in 3 chance to drop from a Goblin Summoner during a hard mode Goblin Army. There are 2 ways you can go about summoning the Goblin Army as soon as you enter hard mode. One way is by killing enough Goblin Scouts which spawn in the outer 1/6 of your map to obtain Tattered Cloth. With 10 tattered cloth and 5 wood, you can craft the Goblin Battle Standard at a loom, which can be used to summon the Goblin Army whenever you like. The other way you can go about summoning the Goblin Army is by simply waiting on one to occur naturally, which has a 1 in 60 chance of occurring randomly at dawn. During the event itself, the first part should be pretty easy as it's only pre-hard mode enemies. Using a sword like the Blade Tongue will blast through these enemies with ease. Shortly into the event, a Goblin Summoner may spawn, which is who we're after for the knife. These things are much more dangerous than any enemy in the invasion, so I recommend dealing with them as quickly as possible. Lucky for me, I got the Shadowflame Knife first try. But if you're still struggling at this stage, you can always flatten out an area and dig a hole for all the other enemies to fall in and fill the surrounding area with traps. This will mean that the only enemy you have to worry about is the summoner. These will spawn much more frequently and be super easy to take out in a small room with the Blade Tongue due to its ichor projectiles. Now that you've got your hands on it, let's take a look at how it performs. The knife also fires small flaming projectiles that consume no mana or ammunition. What makes these projectiles so unique is that they do not in fact pierce, but instead ricochet twice off enemies, dissipating upon their third impact. With the right trajectory, you can essentially triple your DPS with this thing by ricocheting off 2 enemies, hitting a total of 3. This can make it deadly when used in small spaces or from far above, as the knives will bounce up and land for a second time, dealing more damage to the target. Because of this functionality, the weapon's actual weakness comes when it's met with single brutes, as the knives only bounce back at the player, dealing mediocre damage to each enemy. What you really want is a scenario where enemies are coming from multiple sides. As you can see, the ricochet is causing the group on the right to also take damage. This unfortunately means that it's nothing particularly insane against bosses, but you have to remember that this is the melee class we're talking about, and I'd still say it's one of the best and safest options to use against the mechanical bosses. The destroyer can be fought from a distance and taken out at a pretty decent pace due to the knives ricocheting off the body and hitting him again. I'd actually say this weapon works better on a boss like Queen Slime, as it can be fully utilised as a ranged weapon, maintaining a constant source of damage on the boss from a good distance away. This weapon is an absolutely fantastic option for this fight if you're playing melee. So what else makes this weapon a great option? Well, apart from its incomparable range for a melee weapon at this stage of the game, I love how simple it is to obtain. The grind for enough tattered cloth to create the summoner isn't really that bad. There just isn't many good options for the melee class until post-mech, with swords like the True Excalibur and the True Knight's Edge. But until then, this has always been my go-to. What do you think? Is the Shadowflame Knife the best early hard mode option for melee users, or would you use something else? Thanks for watching. For more Terraria content like this, drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.